It's time for another edition of the BWI Daily Recruiting Show. Today, Ryan Snyder is the guest, and he is going to join us to talk about the official visitor coming to Penn State, Ohio this weekend, some other names to know on the recruiting front ahead of the Nittany Lions home opener. And we're also going to dive into some week 2 recruiting stats from the commits that the Nittany Lions have in the class of 2023. That's all coming up next here on the BWI Daily Recruiting Show. I'm Greg Pickel from Blue White Illustrated. That's Ryan Snyder from Blue White Illustrated. In the weeks ahead, if you missed our exciting news last Thursday, Sean Fitz, formerly of numerous Penn State sites, is back with BWI and is going to be leading and a part of our recruiting coverage. He'll also be a part of the show here in the weeks to come, Ryan. That was the most exciting news for us last week. And then obviously Penn State fans, they were pumped up about that. Also got to see the Lions beat Purdue on the road on the same day. So Thursday was a busy one, Ryan, and we got a lot more recruiting to talk moving forward.
Yeah, well, first off, excited to have Sean. We've been good friends for a long time. I think most people know that by now. This Penn State beat is really friendly. I mean, everybody I'll say it, Lions 24/7. I know you were like, should I say it, Greg? Should I not? No, everybody, from Mark and Tyler and all those guys are our good friends. And Sean's been a good friend of ours for a long, long time. So we're excited to have him with us. And I know probably some of you were hoping Sean be with us today to talk recruiting. We're still ironing everything out, getting it back to a 5-man staff like we had previously. And I think in the weeks to come, I would think next week we'll be talking recruiting with Sean here on Tuesdays, and he'll be sprinkled in for other podcasts in the weeks to come. But Greg and I are going to hold down and talk some Ohio visitors and some Zion Tracy and a couple things today, Greg. So let's kick it off.
Yeah, let's do it. So obviously Penn State, Ohio, the home opener is going to bring a pretty good group of prospects to campus, maybe better than any opener in recent memory, at least when it comes to playing a MAC school. Sean Fitz, as we just mentioned, posted his first look at the visitor list. I know you helped him out with that. So we're going to get into some of those names here in a bit. But first, I wanted to start with Zion Tracy. He is the lone official visitor coming to Penn State this weekend. The On3 recruiting prediction machine favors the Nittany Lions at this point. And Ryan, I think that he's one to keep an eye on this weekend and moving forward as a possible addition to this Penn State class. Let's start with this first. Why is he someone Penn State wanted to get on campus? Why is he someone they want to host for an official visit? As we've discussed before, the fact that they're using an official visit on Zion Tracy obviously signals how much interest they have in him.
Yeah. So Zion came to Penn State 2 summers ago, and had a good workout there. And I think it's important to note, I believe he ran like a mid 4.5s, I want to say. I mean, it was an impressive workout and someone that came on their radar, like I said, in the summer of, 2021, I guess it would be. So they didn't pursue him then. Obviously, last year they had a pretty good defensive back class. They've had quite a few good defensive back classes here in recent years. And Zion goes on, commits to Temple. And then, of course, Temple has a coaching change, and he decides to go the postgraduate route. So Penn State gets another look at him at camp this past summer, which he came on, I think it was the July 29th camp. And not only did he put up good testing numbers again, for a second straight camp, but he put up incredible testing numbers, for being honest with it. I was at low 4.40, 4.25-ish shuttle, I want to say, and then a broad jump of 10.6, which is, really measures explosion. And, those are three really key testing ways to test players, I guess you'd say. And he blew it away with all three of them. So that's when Zion Tracy became, okay, someone we're going to keep an eye on this season to someone we need to just go and get. And so Zion, just this past weekend, claimed an offer publicly. Honestly, that's been in the works for a while now. I think behind the scenes, he's had an offer for weeks now. And I have now logged a recruiting prediction machine pick as well. Honestly, I was going to do it 3 weeks ago and was kind of asked not to, because Penn State's been trying to keep Zion Tracy on the low for the most part. We've seen some other schools poaching their players, and Penn State's always been good at identifying guys. And now that we are right up to this official visit, I think that worry is kind of gone away now, which is why we can discuss it a little bit more. But I expect him to be a Nittany Lion, whether it is Saturday, whether it's Sunday, whether he goes and takes some time, we'll see. But he's made it very blunt. This is the school he wants to attend. Penn State wants him. The offer's out there publicly now. Everything has kind of been checked there. as a player that should end up in this class. He does technically have an official visit scheduled to Syracuse for the end of October. I'd be really surprised if that visit happens. I think he's going to be a Nittany Lion. I think could be probably Sunday after his official visit, but it wouldn't even surprise me really if it came before or how last year they were doing those commitments on the field. That wouldn't surprise me either. But keep an eye on Zion Tracy this weekend. I put in a confidence score of 70. If I'm being honest, it's higher than that, but I try not to put like a 90 and make it look incredibly obvious. But I expect him to be a Nittany Lion. I expect him to be soon.
Yeah, so Penn State, of course, moving on in the class of 2022 with hoping to add a few more players here before December, which, of course, is still a ways away. But Zion Tracy would be a good get for the Nittany Lions, Ryan. And I think that you make a good point there. We talked about this last year, but I think as we get ready for the first home game, it's worth noting once again that there's some believe that these on-field commitments prior to game day have some kind of an impact or a negative thing to do with the way the team actually prepares and plays, and that's just not the case. So we don't know if Zion Tracy is going to do that, but I just felt like getting that off my chest here as we get ready for the home opener, because we do see that Penn State on game day, they bring a lot of recruits out to midfield with the opportunity to meet with James Franklin and get that one-on-one time. It's not long, for each kid. It's probably about 20 seconds, if that, but it can be enough to make a difference to guys, especially younger ones who maybe haven't been to Beaver Stadium before, or guys like Zion Tracy who were there for an official visit and all the bells and whistles that come with that. So good thing to keep in mind there, and we'll keep an eye on this and see where it goes moving forward. But certainly,
Greg, let me hop in before we switch real quick.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I just cut you off. Those on-field commitments are like scheduled, guys. Like that was always expected. And then also like, this is why you pay your assistants big money. Like that allows James Franklin to focus on recruiting, allows recruiting staff to focus on recruiting. That's why Yurchich and Terry Smith and everybody on the offensive defensive side, they are the ones really focusing on pregame prep. So it was funny because you bring a good point. Like a lot of people on our boards last year were like, they got a game coming up. Like, well, what are they doing? Taking commitments and smiling and doing photos. And this is I don't want to say sophisticated, but it's a detailed operation. They know what they're doing on game day. And, taking those photos and building those bonds with recruits. That's how you get those Joey Porter Juniors out there in a couple years to come.
Right. So obviously we'll see plenty of that on Saturday. Kickoff scheduled for noon. The game will be on ABC if you're not at Beaver Stadium. We, of course, will be, and you can join us at Blue White Illustrated for $1 for 1 year of access. That deal's not going to last forever, folks. So make sure you join us here as Penn State looks to move to 2-0. And also you'll get, obviously, recruiting coverage from Ryan and Sean, inside team info from Nate Bauer, and, of course, the extensive film breakdowns and much more from Thomas Frank Carr, who is producing for us today. Ryan, Penn State, Ohio visitors. I guess let's leave that for the end and get into some of these stats first. It wrapped up from week 2 of the high school football season. I want to start with Jaxon Smolik, and there's a reason for that, because you won't be at Penn State, Ohio. You have elected to fly to Iowa to see Jaxon Smolik play on Friday night, and I know you're excited about that. So what have you seen from him so far? It was another game where if you look at the stat line, I don't know if you're blown away by it, but certainly there's plenty to like when you watch the film about how his season started so far.
Yeah, I haven't double checked this morning, but has Jaxon been putting out film yet? I don't think he has been. Of his season
so you can catch a couple clips on YouTube if you look for the full games. You can find those, but he hasn't been releasing it himself. No,
right. So
at least not yet.
That's right. That Southeast Polk game was definitely on YouTube. But that's why I'm going out there. I don't know a whole lot. I want to learn more about their offense. There's a lot of things that I think we'll learn a lot with this trip. And then, oh, by the way, he's playing J.J. Cole, a guy that we were discussing for the longest time as somebody that Penn State was really interested in. Of course, he's committed to Iowa State now. So if I'm going to fly to Iowa to watch a prospect, one, I want to watch a quarterback, and two, I want to watch that quarterback against another really good quarterback. And I think we'll get a much better feel for Smolik and what he brings and all types of that stuff. T. Frank, I know you're getting behind the scenes now, excited about all the film I'm going to bring you for you to break down next weekend. But 15 to 22 for 174 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception this past weekend. Hey, they got the win 45 to 19. I mean, he's not putting up those numbers that Aller put up, but I had to go out there to watch Aller to realize why they're putting up those numbers. And it's really just a lot of quick screens, a lot of wide receivers making those numbers massive as what they were. That's really what I took away from those 2 Aller games that I attended last year. So just trying to get a feel for what they do with Jaxon, and just all types of little things there. I think we'll learn a lot, and that's why I'm taking that trip this weekend. He also had 3 rushes for 35 yards, so not much of a runner, but 35 yards isn't too bad compared to I think his first game he only had like 10 or something like that. But just to shift over real quick, a couple other stats for the weekend. Joey Schlafler had a blocked punt for a safety, and he also had a nice 47-yard touchdown. You can see that on his highlights there. Matthias Barnwell had a hell of a catch. I don't know if you guys have seen those highlights on Twitter. They're on his huddle page as well. Check it out. Really nice, like one-handed laying back kind of catch. Was really impressed with seeing his athleticism there. They didn't get the win this past weekend, but the team they faced was a top team. Like there's not too many other like crazy stats for Matthias this weekend, but boy, that's a really impressive catch for a guy his size. Check it out if you haven't seen it yet. Nittany Lions had 6 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and 2 sacks. Roman Catholic got a win over 41-14 over Trinity. That game was actually ended early from what I was told because there was a little skirmish between the two teams. Of course, Jordan Hill is the head coach at Trinity, and then Rick Preedy is the head coach of Roman Catholic. 2 people I'm pretty close with there, so I'll be curious to learn a little more about that story. I was planning to attend that game, and I was in a wedding this weekend, so I didn't get to it. I would say that the guy who's putting up the numbers, the eye-popping stats right now, it definitely remains Tony Rojas, 13 carries for 94 yards and a touchdown. He also had 3 receptions for 91 yards and another score, all playing offense, of course. And then he had 8 tackles, 4 sacks in Fairfax's 38-7 win over Langley. So Tony continues to put up some pretty impressive numbers. And then King Mack, special teams, James Franklin probably loves seeing this, man. King Mack had 2 punt returns for a score, and then he blocked another punt, which is wild to me. Like, he's your kick returner, he's your punt returner, but then you have blocking punts as well. He blocks a punt that falls in the end zone, and they get another score there. St. Thomas Aquinas won 42-0. But I mean, King Mack, a defensive player, scored 21 of those 42 points. I mean, he didn't score the touchdown, but he blocked it, and one of his teammates recovered it there. But yeah, check out King Mack's highlights this weekend. I thought that was pretty impressive. Like I said, that Matthias Barnwell catch was awesome. Tony Rojas had some good stats, and check out the linemen too. I mean, I'm not totally tracking all pancake blocks, although I did see, I think Cooper Cousins had like 4 or 5. But Javen Williams, Cooper Cousins. Who am I missing? Alex Birchmeyer put out some film this weekend. Like the O-linemen are putting out consistent film as well. So check those guys out.
Yeah. No, I was impressed with Rojas's line. It's pretty clear why Penn State was so persistent, I guess you could say, on trying to land him. Nittany Lions has had a nice start to his season, too. That catches my eye. And then, yeah, I'm really curious to see what you learn about Smolik and this high school offense that he plays in when you go out there on Friday. Because, again, I think it's important to note that when Ryan does the stat recaps over the weekend or on Monday, whenever it might be, it's important to look at the numbers. But usually the film's embedded there too at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, and that can tell you a lot more than anything. Now, you always say it, Ryan, and it's true that the more full games we can watch, the better. Now, a lot of teams don't post those, and so they can be a little bit challenging to find. But when you do get to find those, it can tell you a lot about where these guys are, how they've improved, more than just the highlights. Because, to your point that you made last week, you're never going to see the bad plays on the highlights and how guys bounce back from the bad plays. And that can mean as much, if not more, than the one-handed catches or pancake blocks and things like that. So keep an eye out for that stuff. And, we'll see what Jaxon Smolik looks like. But anything in particular other than the obvious you're hoping to learn when you go out there Friday, Ryan?
Just getting to know. I mean, I always like to get to know his coaches and stuff too, because I'm going to sound like Franklin here, right? But like when you get to know the people around the school, you get to know that you learn so much more about the player and his personality and things like that. So I fly out pretty early. I'll be hanging out around the school a little bit during the day. I don't know exactly the access I'll get. They're playing a massive game against Ankeny. This is a really important game for playoffs and things like that down the road. So the last thing I want to be is that annoying reporter trying to steal your quarterback before the biggest game, one of the biggest games of the year. So we'll see. I'm kind of working that out with their coaches and all that. But just getting to know people, man. I mean, like from my experience going out to see Aller last year, like just getting to know family, getting to know assistant coaches, things like that. It means so much down the road then when you're trying to do different stories or really trying to paint the picture of what fans need to know about this individual. So that's the big chunk of it. And then of course, obviously just seeing how he plays and getting all that film and, we'll do different interviews and things like that. But I'm much more of like I'm a I'd like to say I have the gift of gap, or at least my friends always say that about me. So just kind of getting to know people and getting them familiar with who I am as well. That's really what I'm trying to take out of this.
All right. Well, stay tuned for that. You'll be able to follow updates on BlueWhiteIllustrated.com as Jaxon Smolik and his team look for a big win this Friday night. And then obviously, Ryan, we'll get into the other big attraction of the weekend, Penn State, Ohio, and the recruits who will be on campus, as we mentioned at the top of the show. Sean Fitz has a first look for subscribers at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. It's just $1 for 1 year. If you haven't taken advantage of that yet, go to the site right on the homepage, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. You can sign up for 1 year for $1. It's not going to last forever. So check it out at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. But let's get into a couple of the names, Ryan, here. We mentioned Zion Tracy, the only official visitor scheduled to be on campus, but let's highlight some other names to note too. As you've mentioned previously here on the show, longtime high school prep writer Tom Lemming is going to be in town doing his annual photo shoot, and that is upped the number of players and the quality of the players who will be on campus for this game.
For sure. I think we're going to see around a dozen or so scholarship guys, not including the committed players, of course. I mean, I will say there will be a handful of committed guys. Birchmeier's expected, Donko, Schlafler, I think Barnwell and Rojas. Those are the guys who have said so far that they'll be there. And I wouldn't be surprised if a couple others end up popping up on campus. But we never really see a list like this for the first game of the year. I mean, especially Villanova wasn't the first game, but these first couple ones, Penn State usually just kind of, one, they like to really kind of focus on their team a bit more. And then two, just they're not the most exciting of games, and it's hard to get to State College as it is. And by the way, they're usually at noon. So there's a couple things there that usually keep these lists kind of small. But as you mentioned, Lemming's doing his photo shoot up there this weekend. Lemming does this usually every year in State College, and Tom's a very respected name in recruiting, and so a lot of recruits will come out there to introduce themselves and kind of get their names out there more. So that will help bring this list up a bit. A handful of guys I want to mention. Brandon Raymond is I think a pretty impressive wide receiver from St. Joseph's Prep that I think fans should keep an eye on. He came up to, what camp was it? I think they did a midweek camp in June.
Yes.
Brandon came up and had a really good workout there. I thought that was certainly grabbed my attention there. I knew about him before, but I didn't really get to see him up close. Thought he had excellent hands that day. Put up some decent testing numbers. He didn't do all the testing that day, but just a couple of the testing numbers he did, he certainly stood out. And I think he'll be a guy, and you can say this about all 2024 guys, but how this season goes will play a massive part in where he's at on Penn State's board. But I really like Raymond. I really like his personality too. A lot of little things there, like, this guy fits Penn State. So I'm excited to see him. His teammate, David. So actually, he's going to have a lot of teammates there. I should probably just hit on that. David Washington's a top wide receiver prospect from St. Joseph's Prep that's coming on up. Anthony Sacca's a 2025 prospect from Prep who's coming up. I think fans, if you're not familiar with Anthony Sacca by now, you probably don't follow recruiting very closely. He's 2025, but he's Tony Sacca's son. And just about everybody's going to be offering and after this young man, Georgia, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan, Miami's another one. I mean, he's already got some really good quality offers. One thing is too, what's actually interesting with Sacca too, is I don't think he's ever been to a game, actually been to a real game. I think he said when he was really young, he went to one. And then the most recent one was, I don't know, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, something like that. And he just went to a blue-white game. So that's just kind of wild to me that, his dad's a former quarterback here, and they live in Philadelphia too. It's not like they're in California, but he really hasn't been to a game. So this will be his first opportunity to kind of take that all in as a recruit. A couple others. There's some quality guys from St. Francis expected. Michael Van Buren's a top quarterback prospect. I think we've talked about a ton. Right now he's ranked top 100 in the On3 consensus, and we've talked about Jaden Bradford and Jaden Davis and a bunch of guys. Van Buren's in that mix of those kind of 4 or 5 quarterbacks that, obviously let's watch closely this season and see who really they decide to go all after. His teammate, I'm going to butcher the last name, Ife Obijuwu. I'm sorry, Ife, if I screwed that up there, but he's a really good cornerback in the 2024 class. He's expected as well, about 6'1", 190 out of St. Francis, another top 200 kind of player. Ife was up earlier this year. I want to say it was March. I'm trying to pull it up here. Yes, March 26th. He was on campus, so this will be his second time to Penn State, and he's off to a great start this season too. I think he's going to be a player who moves up in the rankings. Let's see how the season goes, but he's going to play some really good quality teams. He's got all the measurables, testing numbers that what we've seen so far are all pretty good. So keep an eye on him moving up in the months to come. But like we've mentioned, I mean, you're going to have some quality programs bringing up quality players for this photo shoot. There's going to be a few others there from St. Francis. I think DeJuan Williams is a quality running back that we're expecting as well. I didn't mention Samaj Jones, who's the quarterback out of St. Joseph's Prep. Like St. Francis and Prep are both bringing some quality guys up for this one. And then you'll mix and match some guys throughout the region. I'm not going to put the whole list out there. As you guys know, we try and keep a good chunk of it behind the paywall. But I think the thing to know is there should be about 12 to 15 scholarship guys on campus when it's all said and done. This one other guy, too, I really want to mention before we end up here quick is Jeff Exenor, 2025. Listed as an athlete right now at 6'2", 210 out of McDonough. I think he's going to grow into a defensive end. I'd be curious just to kind of see how he grows there. But like I said, 6'2", 210 at the moment. Penn State, Vatech, USC, Maryland, Boston College, a handful of schools on Exenor early on. He has a family relationship with Kenny Sanders. Kenny Sanders' younger cousin is actually Chris Jones. I don't want to confuse him with the 2024 linebacker. But Sanders is close with some people in the Exenor family. So just something to keep an eye on down the road there on how that relationship impacts Penn State here. But Exenor has been on campus, I think, at least 2 or 3 times now. And this will be I think this will be his second game at Penn State. I'll have to double check on that.
Yeah, so it's going to be a good list. There's no doubt about that. We'll have complete coverage at BWIIllustrated.com of both the Penn State Ohio game and also the recruiting fallout from it, whether that's Zion Tracy, whether that's guys getting offers. Stay tuned to BWIIllustrated.com for the latest. Ryan, as we come down the home stretch here, it's been a light show, been a light week here, but obviously things are about to pick up big time between this opportunity to get prospects on campus for the first time, and obviously everyone will be looking ahead then to Penn State Auburn and what that means on the field, and recruits will be paying attention to it as well. Any final thoughts as we come down the home stretch here and you get ready to head out to Iowa to see Jaxon Smolik in action for the first time?
What'd you think of the Purdue game? You were out there.
What?
I mean, there's not a lot of recruiting to talk about. What do you think?
Yeah, I would just say this, Ryan. I think that the way it was viewed in the immediate moments after the game and the way it's viewed now after going back and watching it and kind of digesting some of that and then watching the totality of week 1 college football, I think it was a better effort for Penn State than I gave it credit for, and I think many people gave it credit for from the jump. Purdue obviously helped it win that game. I don't think there's any question about that. I still am not sure what exactly Purdue's late game plan was other than to
they ran the ball 13 to 14 times. I'm sorry. Yep. That's crazy to me. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the plan was clearly to keep as much time on the clock for Penn State as possible. And I know they're not a running team, and, we're talking about this game in a much different light. If that pass that was originally called a completion, then overturned to an incompletion, if that is ruled a completion, we're talking about this game in a much different way. But, Penn State was probably not the better team for 4 quarters, but it made the plays late when it needed to. And we've seen them not be able to do that on the road before, Ryan. So I think you have to take this one for what it is. Yeah, there's some sloppy things they need to get cleaned up. Yes, there were some penalties that, can't continue to happen week in and week out moving forward. But all told, I think it was a much better performance than what it was originally given credit for. And when you look at this team now, we knew that it was going to have some strengths, and I think we saw a lot of those. We figured there'd be some weaknesses, and we saw those come up. And, now you play an Ohio team that you should have no problem with. And we should see a lot more of those freshmen play, and obviously hopefully get to see more of Abdul Carter after his targeting ejection that just, I'm just not sure what you're supposed to do in that situation, but we talk about this at least once a year. So just kind of is what it is. But yeah, a good performance. And those who were backing the Lions with the 3.5 found a way to cover in the end. So congratulations to those of you who did.
I said they ran the ball 13 to 14. They passed the ball. It was of the 14 plays leading up to Penn State's final game-winning drive. They threw the ball 13 of 14 plays. I mean, if you just mix in 2 more runs, 3 more runs, I mean, it looks a whole lot different. At least Penn State's final drive would have probably been up to like 0-0-0 on the clock, is what I'm saying there. So just mind-boggling to me. I still think that was Purdue giving the game away more than Penn State totally earning it. But then, yes, like you said, when I went and watched some of those other teams this past week, and I thought, Penn State's a better team than I thought, and they deserve a little more credit for that game. And I think Purdue's still going to be a good team. I mean, they were a 9-win team last year when you include their bowl wins. So Just curious to see how it shakes out. But Joey Porter Jr., I thought he had a heck of a second half there. Just that was a win they had to have. A win they absolutely had to have if they're going to hit 9 wins this year, which is, I think, what most fans expect them to do.
Yes, I mean, I don't think there's any way for them to get to that mark without a win in that particular game. And now you face an Ohio team that you're a 24.5 point favorite over and should be able to win and win convincingly. I think that a lot of Penn State fans are going to have their eye on the running game this week and what that can do against Ohio after it again failed to break the 100-yard mark against Purdue. But I think we saw some signs that it can be better in that department this year, Ryan, compared to years past. But I still understand the frustrations that are out there and the inconsistencies and things like that. So we'll see. But should be a good week for Penn State. Should be a good week for Penn State recruiting, and we'll see what the commitments continue to do. But yeah, I would say ultimately we're on the same page there. If you go look at T. Frank's stock up, stock down stuff, you can get a sense of who played and who didn't, or who played well and who maybe did not play so well. That's at bluewhiteillustrated.com, youtube.com/bluewhiteillustrated, and wherever you get your podcast. So Ryan, I think we can call it there. He's Ryan Snyder. I'm Greg Pickel, and we are wrapping up this week's edition of the BWI Daily Recruiting Show. We'll catch you next week, and maybe even have Sean Fitz on with us then. But until then, have a good rest of the week.